in the next 2 hours. A mother, wife, leader, politician. That's who she is. We're up close with Nana Konadu Agyeman-Rawlings, flag bearer of the National Democratic Party, live with us in the studio. Also, it's exactly a year since Madam Charlotte Osei was appointed boss of the Electoral Commission. What has been her performance during her stay? Is she living up to expectation? We will find out. And engineers arrive at Ayi Mensah in preparation for works aimed at stopping rocks from falling on road users on the Ayi Mensah Ebri Road. We have details in the following report. All that and more in the next 2 hours. My name is Francis Alman. It's the Pack Show just for you. Sit down, relax, and let's get started. And as always, your views and comments are welcome on this program. Look for us on social media, on Facebook and Twitter at Joy News on TV. Drop your comments as well as your views on any of the stories we'll bring you here on the program. We'll be glad to hear your thoughts on any of the stories we'll bring you this afternoon. Remember to add the hashtag #ThePulse to your comments. We begin today from Ayi Mensah, where Turkish engineers have arrived as they prepare to work on rocks falling onto the road. They're due to close the southbound lane of the road to traffic. My colleague Beatrice Edu has been to the area and now reports.
It's been a morning of little activity as a number of Turkish contractors begin to familiarize themselves with the terrain on this stretch of slope from the Pediasi Lodge to where the Ebri toll booth is. They have actually begun clearing the bushes on parts of the rocks here so that they are able to do a good work. We are, as of now, uncertain when authorities would block the road, but all indications show that this will happen within this week. The construction company that is responsible for this work had a number of roadblocks on the roads. As of now, the Highways Authority, as well as some of the officials who are in charge of this, what they call slope repairs, are not able to tell us when this project would start and would finish. But what we are learning is that when this project starts, it will take a period of 6 months before they are able to complete it. And even as they continue with this project, there have been a number of roads that they want to use for these drivers.
Beatrice Edu with that update from the Ebri Highway, which is supposed to be closed to traffic. There's been some delay. The Turkish engineers are there, as you heard Beatrice mention to you. We'll find out what has caused the delay and bring you details here on the program. But while we wait and get the Ghana Highway Authority for some more details, let me bring you this story now, because more than 1,000 trained nurses who have not been posted after training last year have issued a 2-week ultimatum to the Health Ministry to assign them. Today, leaders of the group known as the Coalition of Non-Posted Nurses, or they call it CNN, presented a petition to the Health Ministry over the delay in their postings. The nurses who graduated in December last year were expected to have been posted in the first quarter of this year. Felix Akoyam Anom speaks for them.
They've given us the assurance, they've listened to our plights, they've told us that the things, they've showed us certain things that they are in the process, and we know that they are in the process. They've given us evidence, we've seen some certain things that they are doing. So we hope and we know that they will do it.
What kind of evidence have they shown?
Actually, I won't disclose that for now, but they've shown us what they are doing, the things that they are doing, the processes that they are doing. So we will say we are happy. At first, we were hearing so many things. They said we are at home because we didn't pass our licensing, and then people were saying that they won't post us to what next year, 2018, a whole lot of stories. But now we came there, they explained things to us, they show us things, they show us how things are being done. Actually, they told us that they are working with three institutions. So it's not something easy. But all they say to us that we should be patient, and then we should believe in them, trust in them. So that is what we are doing. Probably in, let's say, 2 weeks' time, we will come back to follow up.
Well, the spokesperson for the Health Ministry, Tony Goodman, says the ministry is working hard to ensure that these thousands of nurses get posted.
As you are aware, we are currently posting about 5,750 nurses. Most of them have received their postings to their various facilities. We are hopeful that very soon they will also complete their processes and then they will also be posted. It's not as if we don't want to post nurses. I keep saying that we are putting up a lot of facilities in this country. You can see the 7 district hospital, the Dodowa hospital is part of it, the Ridge hospital is part of it, Legon teaching hospital. So we need nurses to work with. So as it stands now, we are processing their document with finance, and very soon they'll receive their postings. As I mentioned to your station this morning, I said if you are dealing with 2 or 3 institutions, you cannot impose your timelines on them. You have your timelines, but you don't know for them. So it will be difficult for me to be giving you timelines now.
I guess we'll wait to see how these nurses get posted in the coming days by the Health Ministry. Still staying with issues to do with health today, Ghana currently sits on top of the log on the African continent as the country with the most users of marijuana. The repressive and punitive nature of the law has not yielded the desired result as growers of the psychoactive substance continue to soar, feeding the biggest illegal drug markets in the world. In the following report, which is a forerunner of a 2-part hotline documentary, Joy News' Latif Idris embarked on a nationwide expedition to investigate the levels of production and use of marijuana and interrogate if the war on drugs, particularly cannabis, will ever end.
We are now in a certain community in one of the regions of Ghana. We are unable to disclose the name of this community for security reasons. With a population of about 4,000, a third of the young men who make up about 30% of the population of the community are farmers. And 1 out of 3 of the farmers is either solely into marijuana plantation or is engaged in miscropping with marijuana. Because production is common, usage of the narcotic product is equally common in this community, which for obvious reasons will remain anonymous. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of concealed marijuana farms scattered across the country. But I could visit just a few, such as this very one. And I must say, this is my first time of getting into a marijuana farm and even touching the leaf and also smelling the bud, the part that is smoked by most users. But the narcotic product is prohibited by the law.
When I was a youth, I never thought I would dare smoke actually, but I am an asthmatic patient. I've been an asthmatic patient from infancy, you know what I mean? And at a certain time, as a youth, I kept hearing from wise speakers or sayings and music that it's good for asthma, it's good for epilepsy and other ailments, glaucoma and others. But the law is so harsh, but so the fear is there because we are all brought up, I am brought up in a Christian home whereby we are forbidden waywardness and unruly, you understand me? But my health poses this question to me that, how is this? They say it's good, some say it's bad. You understand me? The law is harsh, but I may die. So let me experiment it on myself. Then I will give my own judgment what it does to me. Mm-hmm. So I dared muster the courage to taste it in a smoke. And surprisingly, that very day I've tasted it, I was excited the whole day. You understand me?
That was a high sensation.
Yes. But then I kept it on, gradually, and I see that if I smoke, it helps me. Sometimes the mucus will come out freely without me forcing out it, and I'll spit it out. And that is the unwanted accumulation of dust and other pollen grains, which an asthmatic who is allergic, you understand, when it accumulates, your breathing channels get choked, then you have problem, and that is how it comes.
But not everybody agrees with the compelling fact about the medicinal values of cannabis. The CEO of the Mental Health Authority, Dr. Kwesi Osei, is opposed to any attempt to legalize marijuana. He outlines the possible health hazards associated with the use of cannabis.
If you take marijuana in your teens, when the brain is actively developing, and that part is still actively developing, it means you will interfere with your ability to be motivated adequately, to judge adequately, to reason adequately. And no wonder such people eventually, if you're in school, you may drop out because your attention goes onto the marijuana and everything else becomes secondary to you. Indeed, it is known that if people take marijuana in their teens and they continue till they are 45, marijuana and other drugs of addiction, eventually about 70% of them will be dead. I've just mentioned the effect on your motivation, your judgment, impairment, and all those things. Now, if you take marijuana for some time, it in fact even prones you to getting frank mental disorders we call psychosis. Marijuana itself is also a gateway drug towards getting or going for higher or more serious drugs like cocaine, heroin.
A consultant with the International Drug Policy Consortium, Maria Goretti Aneloglu, believes the 2015 statistics as provided by the International Narcotics Control Board clearly show that repressive methods are not working and the collateral damages are devastating. Hence the need to adopt approaches that are evidence-based.
The intent of the United Nations was to address the problem by using these punitive measures or addressing the problem by trying to have a drug-free world, which I always describe as an illusion because it's not possible to have a drug-free world. And so these measures were put in place to address the problem. But what we are seeing now is some unintended consequences, which has actually even been identified by their own body, UNODC, that's the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. They have identified unintended consequences as a result of the methods that have been identified. And so we are saying that if these are unintended consequences as a result of the methods we have adopted, we need to see how we can address this by adopting new methods that other countries have started using, and it is working.
The UN descended hard on countries like Switzerland and Uruguay, particularly when the South American country decided to go into the production of the narcotic product. They've turned states' lands into marijuana farms where they are producing the products. Now, the International Narcotic Control Board accused Uruguay of, quote, pirate attitude. Now, don't you think as a country we stand to be painted with the same brush once we decide to, decriminalize the product?
If you look at the convention, especially the 1988, I think Article 3, Paragraph 4C, it clearly says that states can use treatment, rehabilitation, social reintegration programs to address the problem, which is clearly in the convention. So what other states are doing currently is clearly within the conventions. Okay. So for us to turn around and say that they are behaving like, they are taking a pirate attitude, I don't see that to be a problem, because if you look at decriminalization, depenalization, legalization, to some extent the liberal interpretation of the conventions allows that. It allows for that to take place, but there are limits within which you can do that. So I don't see us being painted with the same brush.
Well, the full Hotline documentary will be aired next month on the Super Morning Show on Joy FM, and on this very channel, you'll join this channel on Multi TV, expected next month. That very succinct and detailed documentary put together by Joy News' Latif Idris. From the wheat farm and legalization of marijuana and cannabis, let's move to the cost today, because the Human Rights Court in Accra will on Wednesday, the 29th of June, rule on an injunction application seeking an interim order to prevent the Driver and Vehicle Licensing Authority, DVLA, from registering a fleet of buses that have been imported into the country by the State Transport Company, STC. The suit filed by a public servant, Kwabna Osei, essentially faults the DVLA for registering vehicles without emergency exit doors. My colleague Raymond Akwa was in court and joins me in the studio for more on this particular story. Raymond, what's the background to this story?
So, when we put together our Road Traffic Regulations Act 2012, LI 2180, one of the dictates of that particular act is to make sure that buses do have emergency exits. So when there is a huge problem on the bus, people can use the alternative exit to leave the bus. But these particular buses, fresh ones, new ones that have been brought in, according to the gentleman, Kwabena, say, do not have the prescriptions and the standards that are supposed to be with buses of its kind. Indeed, he believes that even though there are existing buses with the same problem, it is more pronounced since these buses came in after the act was reviewed and actually put in place. So the airlines should be followed. And he says that the state should lead the way in making sure that the airlines are followed. In the interim, he wants an injunction that will stop the DVLA from registering these cars, putting them on the streets so that they'll be used by people.
Okay. Now, I'm sure that for this gentleman, this public servant who made it to court today, there was equally representation from the other side when this matter was filed, isn't it? What happened in court?
The government has always been of the opinion that, I mean, we are a developing country. Implementation of laws like the LI 2180 needs to take time. The same way we could not force public transports to put in seat belts for everybody, even though the law says so. The same way we are not been able to completely ban the use of motorcycles for public transportation. It is a process that would end sometime in the complete obedience of these laws. So government believes there's a misconstrued application that the gentleman wants, and he's just there to waste the court's time. So what you're saying is that we want to do it over a period of time, but not taking instant effect, which will affect not only the number of cars on our streets, but the entire transportation system in a whole. So that's been the defense from government.
So for this injunction application, it will be heard on Wednesday. Until then, what happens? Can STC go ahead and use these vehicles registered by DVLA?
No, the school of thought is clear that when a court is bound to make such a judgment on an issue like that, it is as good as saying stay all actions until the determination is done. Indeed, the idea behind this is that if your actions will ultimately affect the outcome of the case, or impact it in a way that's negative or positive, and render useless the person who is pursuing the case, the intent for which they are pursuing the case, then do not go ahead to make any determination at all.
Okay, that's for this issue to do with the STC. There was another matter too that happened in court that you followed today, Raymond. It's about the popular hip life musician Wiser. You remember him last year in December when he exposed his genitals during a live performance of a program on Christmas Eve. Raymond, what's happened with him? I hear he's jumped bail. He's been looked for. Bench warrant issued for him.
So as usual, 2 weeks ago he came to court with his lawyer. But today the case was called. The lawyer stood up and said he cannot find his client. He's tried all the means he could use to reach him. He's tried all the people who are relatives and friends that he can also try to reach him through, but it's not been successful. So since all the alternatives to get him is being unsuccessful, the court should take a decision on that. Immediately, prosecution demanded that no, we cannot allow this happen. In fact, why we opposed bail in the first place was that we did not trust this guy will live up to the dictates of the court. If you remember, in February this year, the same gentleman was nowhere to be found for some time until the court issued a bench warrant. That is when he appeared in court. So prosecution referenced that case and said the guy has a disdain for following the due process and also the rule of law. So the court should issue another bench warrant, and this time out, even if he appears the same day, it should be implemented. The furious judge said, okay, I'm giving you a bench warrant. Arrest him wherever he is, keep him in jail, bring him on the 13th of July.
That's quite a long time between now and then. So if he's found today, he will spend quite a while in behind bars before he's brought to court. Now, for the lawyer, when he says he can't find him, is it that he's going to look for every option at his home, everywhere else to look for, and he didn't find his client?
So that's what shocked many in the courts, because ideally we should have a lawyer being in contact with his client and knowing when to go to court and even appearing the client in this particular case. But he says he's been trying since the last court day 2 weeks ago to reach him. He's been unsuccessful. He's tried all other means and he doesn't know what to do at this point in time.
This is very interesting, and for a man who we are learning, this will not be the first time he's doing this. There will be a lot of implications, especially for when he next appears in court next month on the 13th of July, I hear. What other case did you cover today, Raymond?
Okay, so the understanding on that particular one, related to this particular case, right before the Wiser case was even heard, last year in June, a gentleman by name Johnny Essel decided on his own to, they call it to have carnal knowledge, not unnatural carnal knowledge, to have carnal knowledge of a mental patient at an hospital. So there was a brouhaha in the court today when the idea was that this guy was consistently, he's a nurse, night nurse, It goes around the various wards, having carnal knowledge of the people who are supposed to be there as patients. One of them...
Where is this?
This is in Pram Pram, private hospital where he works. It's called the Valley View Hospital. That is where the gentleman actually does his job. So he's a night nurse. The mentally unstable people who are on admission in the mental hospital are the ones that happen to be his victim. So one of them apparently was better off. So when he did go to have natural carnal knowledge of the lady reported to the family, they reported to the police, and he was arrested. His sad part was he's been virtually abandoned since last year. So today, for the first time, he was given bail and asked to go home and still be coming back to court as the case is now progressing to the main charge.
But do we know what the understanding of this gentleman is in doing this, going around sleeping with patients
so the judge
at the
asked
hospital?
him what he derives from doing something of this sort. The only indication he gave was that it was the devil that led him to do that, and he saw mostly the women on the female wards as very beautiful. And he also added something like he thought they needed help, and so gave them the help. And the judge even felt he was not in the right state of mind, but moved on to say that, okay, you give him the required bail because he's been in police custody for over a year, and that is too much time to keep somebody, especially following the most recent Martin Pebu case, which insisted that the bail conditions should be at the discretion of the judge, mindful of Article 86.
Was the gentleman in question in court today?
He was in court.
What was his demeanor?
He was quiet. I mean, he's the unassuming kind. You wouldn't think that somebody of this... And if you see him ordinarily as a nurse who is performing his duties...
night nurse?
Yes. It will be somebody you would not suspect will be engaged in something like that. So this is the hospital where the police and the victim's family having to report this case.
All right. Thank you, Raymond, for these details of the court cases you covered today. 3 different but very interesting cases with very interesting ramifications also, considering when all these cases will be heard. First, for that of the STC vehicles that were brought in, the news is that there's been an injunction application stopping it from being registered by the DVLA because it does not have emergency exit doors. That flies in the face of Ghana's road traffic regulation laws, and that's why a servant or a Ghanaian citizen is going to court seeking that this mistake is corrected as soon as possible. Also, we heard Raymond mention the other matter to do with the gentleman who is a night nurse at the Valley View Hospital at Pram Pram, going about sleeping with women who are on admission at the hospital. His matter was heard today in court. He's been granted bail after a year of this matter being heard. We brought you the details. Raymond Akwa was in court to bring us all of that. But we'll still stay in the court a while longer, because if we recall, sometime last year, Adom FM editor Ifya Pokuya was manhandled by some staff of the National Insurance Scheme some time ago. You remember that issue has been filed in court. We followed it through and through to the very end. Today, judgment has been pronounced on that matter, and we can bring you detail of that story right about now. My John Line editor, Malik Abbas Dabu, joins me now in the studio with a copy of that judgment. Malik, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, but that's a nice jacket.
Oh,
beautiful.
No, it's not about me, Malik. Let's move on.
It's a nice jacket.
Thank you. Thank you, Malik. But for this case in point, relating to the Adom FM editor, Ifya Pokuya, who was assaulted by some NHIS staff, what's the judgment today on that case?
Well, I think it's important to trace back to what happened. This was in 2014. In fact,
2 years ago.
Yes,
okay.
In 2014, Kofi Hassan was sent by Adom FM to go and report on an incident at Ablekuma South, I think an area like that, where the NHIS, they were giving out cards and they were registering people, and there were long queues and people were complaining. So this reporter was sent there. In the process of conducting interviews, the managers of NHIS were unhappy with the fact that he was conducting interviews to publish the story. They confiscated his recorder and his mobile phone. Now, Ifya Pokuya followed up with another reporter, and then a brawl ensued. They were beaten up and put into the gutter. The state got involved, took the matter to court. They didn't demonstrate any interest in pursuing the case. So our lawyers decided to file a civil suit at the Human Rights Court, demanding that these people's rights were abused. They have a right to freedom of expression, and we all know that the Constitution guarantees the right of journalists to do their work, and their work should not be interfered with and all of that. The argument was the manner in which these people were treated was in violation of their fundamental human rights as guaranteed under the Constitution. The NHIA officials disagreed in court and said that, well, they didn't think that they had any constitutional protection, and that if they had any remedies at all, those remedies ought not to have been found in human rights. The court disagreed and gave its judgment on the 23rd, asking that they should pay a total of 7,500 Ghana cedis in damages for the violation of these people's fundamental human rights guaranteed by the Constitution.
Okay, and what was the reaction of first the editor who was beaten up with her reporters? I'm talking about
Well, Efia Pokia feels vindicated because at that time she was thoroughly embittered by the manner in which she had been treated. She didn't think that she deserved that. There were denials here and there. If you remember on News File, the NHIS boss at the time, Sylvester Mensah, came here with a picture of a man. He claimed that man had also been beaten. The NHI denied that they were the result. They caused the beating. In fact, in their case in court, they argued that it was rather the people who were in queue, who were being interviewed, they caused the assault, if there was any assault at all. The court disagreed and said they believed that the NHIS authority had a duty to ensure that these people's rights were protected, and that if at all some other people were coming to assault them, they should have prevented that from happening. They didn't, so they found them culpable.
And for the suit that was filed in court by Efia Pokua's lawyers, what was the demands we were making in our reliefs, and how much we wanted to take in damages?
Well, they didn't state any specific figure. What they asked was they wanted a declaration from the court that, first of all, their fundamental human rights had been abused. The court agreed, and so they wanted a declaration to that effect. The court agreed and declared that indeed and in fact their fundamental human rights were abused. They asked the court to grant any other release that they may find necessary, and the court granted same. Okay,
all right. Thank you, Malika Basdabu, for those details of that judgment. I just want to go for a break, but when we come back, we'll be up close and personal with the former First Lady of the Republic, now seeking to be Ghana's first female president of the country in the 2016 elections. We have details of that interview and more after the break. Stay with us.
Your vote is more than a thumbprint, more than party colors, more than family history. Your vote is the future. Join the conversation on Election 2016 on TV, radio, online, and mobile. #ElectionHQ.